Welcome. This is an episode of Democratic Dialogue, and I'm Karen Bell, the chair of the Gloucester Democratic City Committee. And today our guest is Rick Jakius, who is the district director for Seth Moulton, our congressman for the 6th Congressional District. And this is actually, I think, the second time that we've
It's great to be back.
hosted you. That's right. So I'm going to, ask him to start out really by talking a little bit about his job, the challenges that you face, and how long you've been doing it, and what has changed since, in the last year or two, actually.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. I've been with the Congressman almost since the beginning. I was one of the last official hires on the staff, and my role as district director is really to be his eyes and ears in the community when he's in Washington, D.C. So I will frequently represent his interests and convey his message when he's in D.C. and make sure that I'm bringing back the message from community members, business leaders, civic leaders to help inform what we're doing and the policies we may be making or voting on in D.C. In terms of what's changed, certainly we're a little more comfortable. I think the first year or so was trying to figure out where the light switches are and get to know all of the communities and their needs and their interests. And as we've evolved into this position, I think we have a pretty good understanding of what it is that makes the 6th Congressional District tick. What are the sort of unique needs and interests of each of our communities? And so it's been a lot of fun to get an opportunity to work with individual groups, with individual leaders, to try and advance the needs and interests of each individual community.
Mm-hmm. And I think I think we often forget, at least on Cape Ann, that the 6th Congressional District is really pretty diverse. I mean, diverse, ethnically diverse in terms of income levels, residential patterns, and maybe really diverse in terms of needs. Could you talk a little bit about that diversity and partly because some people think in Massachusetts we're all just one kind of highly educated liberal group, but in fact I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The 6th Congressional District is made up of 39 cities and towns in the northeastern corner of Massachusetts. It's most of Essex County, although not in its entirety, and a little bit of Middlesex County. We have a wide range of incomes, a lot of upper middle class, upper class bedroom communities, people who are commuting often into Boston for work or who have vacation homes or sort of large homes in the district. And we have a strong working class and middle class community. We have some folks in the interior of our district who work in agriculture. We have a strong seafood and ocean industry along our coastline. In the southwest corner, down in Burlington, Bedford, we have a lot of large companies. We see some biotech, medtech, and other technology-based companies. So it's really it cuts across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the most salient issues that you and the congressman are trying to do something about now, or that you're feeling really hearing from these communities?
Yeah. The issues we hear about are the same bread and butter issues I think that we understand that people care about across this country. It's issues of finding a good paying job that provides meaning in life. It's affordable, accessible health care. It's good transportation. People are tired of being stuck in traffic. It's housing costs and the rising costs of housing. So it really comes down to quality of life type issues. And so that's what we've really tried to focus on. We've tried to focus on areas of economic development, housing, transportation, because that's what we hear over and over again are important to people.
Yeah. What about some of the, longer range issues? Climate change, coastal flooding, that kind of, infrastructure.
Absolutely. I mean, those are certainly issues that people bring up. Coastal resiliency is a huge issue for our office, and it's it's not just a long range problem as we've seen from the flooding and storms we've had. There's an immediate impact happening in coastal communities like the 6th Congressional District, and we've done a few things. The Congressman has a bill to create a grant program to explore scalable solutions to the impacts of sea level rise and the increasing ferocity we're seeing in the storms that hit our coast. He's working on a bill with a Republican legislator out of Florida, Carlos Curbelo, that would provide infrastructure grants, a cost-sharing program to actually implement some of those projects. And in Newburyport, we partnered with the Harvard Kennedy School to do something really interesting, where we are working with the city and Harvard Kennedy School to create a program or to take better leverage a federal program that will actually reduce people's federal flood insurance rates if they take, if the city and if the community takes efforts to mitigate against against sea level rise.
Oh, that's quite interesting. I know the Kennedy School sometimes has internships where they work on specific problems, and they often come up with pretty creative solutions.
Absolutely. We had a team of a half dozen Kennedy School students who worked with us for an entire semester. This is the second time we've actually done a project with them, and it's an incredible asset. We really, not only with the Kennedy School, but we try and leverage all of the higher ed institutions in terms of having interns who work in our office, fellows, case teams like the one in the Harvard Kennedy School. We try and stretch our resources and find as much opportunities to partner with the private sector, nonprofits, the higher education institutions to strengthen what we're able to do for our communities.
Wow. And of course you mentioned, we talked about intensity of storms and flooding, but ocean warming obviously has already affected the fisheries industry.
You're absolutely right.
And I think we sometimes forget that because it's like, global warming and storms, but then there's this huge impact, I think.
Well, the challenges we're seeing with fish stocks and the limitations we're seeing put on our fishermen because of the questions around those fish stocks really comes as much from climate change as it does from any potential impact of the fishing industry. We spoke to the owners of one of the large seafood restaurants just recently, and he said he's increasingly having to go to Newfoundland and Iceland to buy his product because that's where the fish are going.
Yes.
That's because we're seeing such sea level rise, and we're seeing fish that you usually saw much further south, mahi and other species starting to come into the Gulf of Maine, and it's completely changing our fishery and having a huge impact on the fishermen. We were actually really proud just last week to announce that part of the program that NOAA has implemented to assess fish stocks includes at-sea monitoring, where people go out onto the boat to assess the fish stock. We're very proud of the fact that we were able to work with NOAA to ensure that the fishermen were getting reimbursed for the costs they were incurring for the at-sea monitoring program, not just for this fishing season, but actually even reimbursed to a great degree for the previous fishing season as well.
And this is something that Congressman Moulton and NOAA work out together. That's already...
the Congressman has been really supportive of this issue from day one. And what he has felt is that what we need to do is look at the best science available. There's so much data out there, and our ability through big data to really analyze what's going on there. There's an opportunity for us to really have a much better sense of what's happening with our fishery, so that our fishermen, the last people who want to see the fish go away are the fishermen. This is their livelihood. And so if you can bring together science, you can bring together the regulatory industry or the regulatory bodies, and you can bring together the fishing industry and agree upon some of the science, and then we think we can have a much better conversation about how we can ensure we have a sustainable fishery far into the future.
Wow. That actually brings up a recent question directed to me. I got a call out of the blue from a woman who she and I guess several others have started an initiative that you may or may not have heard about to hold civic conversations over dinner about just issues and learn how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And she said, what we're really interested in is to try to find out why Congress is not doing its job. And I said, well, compared to when? Or, she said, we'd like a speaker. And so I said, well, I think you might be looking at a historian, who could say, is this a time in Congress when the ability of both sides to work together is particularly, really has reached a critical, terrible state, or was it ever this way in the past? So anyway, we talked a little while, and I said, well, I'm actually affiliated with the Democratic Party, so, we do lots of things that are, we're trying to change the situation. But anyway, I would just be interested in your take on that because, of course, I think every member of Congress does think that he or she is trying to do his or her job, but how could the public be perceiving it as, not doing its job? Or
I don't think there's any...
I think you have to rephrase the question even.
I don't think there's any doubt that we've seen a significant and troubling decline in civil discourse in this country. And there's certainly a lot of challenges. The ability for people to get on social media and not be accountable to their own to their own word. The ways in which outside actors are actually stirring up this sentiment is brand new and troubling. The lack of civics education in our schools and people coming up and not understanding how our government works and what it means to interact with our government and appreciating the role that government plays. And that has certainly trickled up to Congress. The Congressman has said Congress is not lacking smart people. Congress is lacking people with political courage because he has these conversations with some of his Republican colleagues in the House locker room or in the cloakroom or on the floor, and they understand what's happening right now in this country isn't right. And they admit it then, but then they walk out of those rooms and they go in front of the cameras and they aren't willing to say something. And so that is something from the very beginning the Congressman has been very adamant about. He's going to stand up against the Republican Party when he thinks it's not doing the right thing. And he's shown that he's going to stand up against the Democratic Party as well when he thinks it's not doing the right thing. It's about what's right for the country. That's what's really motivated him. And that's what's really motivating the work he's doing politically going forward and heading into the 2018 election.
I know that Congressman Moulton has been very active around the country and working with groups of either candidates for election or congressmen and congresswomen who have already, who are holding office, but they're trying to achieve, either held on to their offices or trying to achieve something in particular. And I just wonder if you could say a few words about, I know the Serve America PAC is certainly one of them, and then I know about, I think it's called the New Democrat Coalition is another one.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to talk about both of those, but I think it's probably important to even take a step backwards for your viewers to understand how Seth got into elected office to begin with. He had no real interest in running for elected office. He was recruited actually by a mutual friend of ours, a woman who started a nonprofit called New Politics. And the premise of New Politics was to recruit military, Peace Corps, and AmeriCorps alumni, people who had served in national service roles, people who had set aside partisan politics and done something for the good of their country. Because the premise was that we've never had fewer veterans serving in Congress than we do now. During Vietnam, I believe it was something like 70 to 80% of Congress had all served in the military. And so the idea was these are the people who knew how to set aside politics and get the things done for the country. And so that's what got Seth into office. And so when he got here, he took the concept of that nonprofit and applied it to recruiting candidates for office, specifically to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. So he has recruited 21. Well, he's working with 21 candidates across the country, all of whom have served their country either in the military or through Peace Corps or through AmeriCorps, who are running for office as Democrats in the kinds of races that we need to be able to compete and win if Democrats are going to take back control of the Congress. And these are not hyper-partisan Democrats. These are people who understand what it means to do the right thing, to be bipartisan, to collaborate. And so we believe that not only is our goal to take back the U.S. House of Representatives for the Democrats, but it's also to bring a totally and completely different ethos to Congress of people who want to work together to get things done for the American people.
And then the other group, which is the new Democrat
Yeah, the
coalition.
New Democrat coalition actually predated the Congressman,
Exactly.
and it's a coalition of sort of economically more centrist Democrats who wanted to. It's actually the largest caucus in the House of Representatives, but it's Democrats who are still fundamentally believe in the Democratic core values, but also tend to be open and supportive of ideas that grow business, grow jobs, look at challenging problems like the future of the economy, how we're going to think more strategically and creatively about national security, a little bit more open at times to collaboration with their Republican colleagues.
So would you say there is a tension between some of these groups and the progressive Democrats, or? We're actually coming into this election season, and we all really have to work
You're
together.
absolutely right.
So.
I think that the Congressman would say that insofar as that tension exists, it doesn't exist amongst the members. They realize what their job is. But that certainly exists out in the political world. The Congressman believes we have to have a big tent as a party.
Right.
We are electing 400, there are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives that are up for re-election, every single one of them, this November. And we have to be able to fight and compete and win as Democrats in every single one of those races. And a Democrat that's going to win in the 6th District of Massachusetts is different than a Democrat that's going to win in Ohio or Florida or California. And we have to be okay with that. We much rather work out those differences from a position of power, where we're working to hold the Trump administration accountable, than from a perpetual state of being a minority party.
Right. Well, actually, that, at least in my mind, brings up another issue, which is, of course, turnout in the elections. Because I looked up this morning, at least in the state of Massachusetts, for the 2016 presidential election, approximately a little more than 74% of all registered voters actually voted. And that's high, fairly high turnout in the United States. About 3.4 million people. And then in 2014, only 50% of registered voters, or 2.2 million in Massachusetts, voted.
Yeah.
And that's a huge gap. That's 1.2 million people just in Massachusetts failed to vote. And, and a lot of them were younger people. It's the people over 60, are sort of the stalwart voters. But if the challenge is to bring younger people out for these midterm elections, what issues, what strategies do you think will work? And what can we all do? As a Democratic City Committee, we're working with Manchester, Essex, Rockport, as well as, of course, Gloucester, to elect a Democratic ticket, all of the Democratic candidates, in November.
Yeah.
So
let me answer two questions there. One about turnout, and then I'll talk about what we do to appeal to young people who often, don't turn out in high number, especially in non-presidential years.
Right.
On turnout, you're absolutely right. When you look at the numbers historically in Massachusetts, when you have high turnout, Democrats win. Everyone assumes this is a Democratic state, but we frequently elect, you see, Republican governors, we've elected Republican senators, and when that happens is typically when we have lower turnout elections. So high turnout greatly benefits Democrats up and down the ticket in Massachusetts. And I think, frankly, that's true across the country. And so you're absolutely right. We have to look at turnout. We have to look at how we capitalize the enthusiasm, the commitment, the anger, the sadness that has come out of the election of Donald Trump. We have to think about how we activate that, how we turn those people into voters, not just in 2020 for the presidential year, but make sure that they understand the importance of midterm elections and off-cycle elections. There's a few things. One, they have to understand the importance of having an opportunity for the Democrats to take back the House and maybe take back the Senate, to provide some sort of check and balance against the Trump administration is incredibly important. The other thing is, I think we can't get caught up in the three-ring circus that is the Trump administration right now. It's very clear that President Trump is far more comfortable as a reality TV star than he is as president, and we can't fall into that trap. We have to talk about the issues they care about. And people care about affordable, accessible health care. They care about, are they going to find a meaningful, good-paying job? They care about, do they have leaders that they can trust? And they care about the fact that we are gutting things like Social Security and Medicare to pay for a tax cut package that's going to the wealthiest Americans. We have to hammer those points over and over again, and we have to help people understand the value and see the need to vote not just in presidential years, but in the off-year elections.
So, in terms of, when you say how to make people realize that, clearly the usual campaign strategies are to do phone banking, knock on doors, talk to people face to face, hopefully try to get through their, whatever phone line they're using. Those are some real challenges. I don't know that there's any easy solution. Knocking on doors seems to be one of the best strategies. But,
We've got to do that. That's the baseline, right? Because we're never going to be able to outspend the other party, especially in a post-Citizen United world. So we have to win in elbow grease and commitment, but we've got to take it beyond knocking doors and making phone calls. For some reason, political activism has become, people have been much more comfortable calling strangers or knocking on the doors of strangers or sending postcards to strangers. I'm not putting any of that down. That's incredibly important. But what we're not doing is having those conversations with our aunt and uncle, with our nieces and nephews, with our coworkers. And those are the people who value our opinion, who know us, who understand where we're coming from. Those are the conversations. We have to be willing to have the tough conversations with the people we know and not just be making the phone calls to the strangers in another state.
No, I've personally had that same experience and actually have trouble picking up the phone to call, my aunt in
it's hard.
Montana who told me she couldn't stand Hillary Clinton. And she, it just... that was hard.
Well, it comes full circle to what you were talking about with civility. We have to be able to come back to a time where we can have a meaningful conversation with one another without kind of making assumptions about each other's motives and really discuss these issues.
Right. And I think, clearly social media is something that we're all sort of grappling with or not, and I don't know whether the use, at least among some people, has fallen off, as a result of what's happened politically. But anyway, we're, clearly there are still people who value social media.
We can't wait for Facebook. We can't wait for Twitter to solve that problem. We have to become smarter consumers of social media ourselves. We can't just forward on. It's so easy to click and forward on a message. We have to do the legwork to make sure that what we're reading is real, that what we're reading is true. And we have to make a commitment to also support the media that we know is real, honest media. We need to be subscribing to our papers. We need to be supporting those news outlets that we know are providing quality news sources and not just hitting the forward button on Facebook.
Well, I think this is gives us a lot of things to think about. There's certainly a lot of work to be done. I guess locally, it's really heartening though to see every now and then many new people turn up, they tell me what can I do to help, and I think we're going to be trying to adopt as many new strategies as we can that might involve at least assembling small groups of people or inviting open discussion, and not do something beyond just the traditional tactics that
You're
Democrats
absolutely right,
usually
and
employ.
that activism is coming from everywhere. We're seeing increased activism within our local parties. We're seeing groups like Indivisible. We're seeing people rally around things online, like Swing Left. So we're seeing the energy. Now we just need to make sure people turn that into action.
Right. And I also think it's very heartening to see new candidates emerge, like Alison Gustafson in Manchester, who is running against an incumbent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have some fantastic candidates in this area, including Jen Rocco Runyon running as well. And so there are a lot of people. Voters have some great candidates to choose from and some great candidates to get out there and work for. And we're seeing people from all walks of life, not just career politicians, saying, you know what, like I need to do something. I need to step up. I need to get involved. And that's really incredible to see the number of people who are stepping up and running for office.
And I think that actually could help, especially as the younger the candidate, the younger the voters who might actually be compelled to work for that candidate turn out and vote. And if they're Democrats, again, they're more likely to have the kind of values that will change things in this country.
You're absolutely right. And one of the big things the Congressman talks about is he believes it's time for a new generation of leaders. That doesn't mean we're pushing others aside, but there's an entire generation of leaders that's ready to step up and lead, that's diverse, that's dynamic, and so he'd really like to see them have that opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing these insights, and I think we're all looking forward to the next time when Seth Moulton will actually come to Gloucester again and do a town hall or come to some other event. So
we'll be back soon. We were here for the Horribles Parade. I think we have a couple of things coming up. So check out our website, moulton.house.gov. There's an events tab where people know where our public events are. Send us emails, reply and interact on Facebook and social media. We love to engage with our constituents.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.